Good evening, all of you. We were talking about the history of English literature, and since we had made our insights into the history of English literature, we went through the different ages, and recently we are dealing with the Elizabethan age. We have seen that how the Elizabethan age is in a revolutionary age in literature and all aspects of the Elizabethan society or Elizabethan period. Uh, that was we can see the need of stable government for the development of the country is one of the necessary thing, and the same thing we have seen in Elizabethan uh, period. So the flourishment of the literature was one of the important aspects in this period, specifically the drama. In our last lecture, we had talked about the legend, the good person of the uh, drama, that is William Shakespeare. We have seen that how this person, William Shakespeare, had made an everlasting impact on the English literature as well as on the English language also. So um, the period, as we just see, first of all we have seen the poetry, then we went through the drama. So next today we'll move towards the Elizabethan prose. So as we just try to find out the importance of the Elizabethan age, we can see that along with the Elizabethan drama and Elizabethan theatre, um, the development of the Elizabethan poetry is also one of the uh, significant stuff. But along with these two things, we can see the development of the prose, that was also one of the important factor in this age. Okay, when we just go and try to find out this period, we can find there is three to four things which were emerged as the important stuff, like variety in literature, then pamphlets was one of the important aspects, then social issues, then criticism, mm, like work of criticism and rhetoric, uh, that is the one stuff which described to the Elizabethan prose. So when you talk about the Elizabethan prose specifically, uh, it has a different kind of variety. In that variety, is first thing is translation, second is polemic, religious and educational tracts, satires, literary debates, criticism, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. These are the different areas where the Elizabethan prose has flourished, and um, it has impacted the literature as well as the language of the period. We know that is even the English is a mother tongue of this Great Britain people, or let's say the UK people in today's scenario. We can see that English was not that much developed and it was in the developing stage. So in Elizabethan age, we can see that the impact of the prose has very immense one, and it has covered these varieties like translations, polemic, religious, and educational tracks, satires, literary debates, criticism, grammar, logic, and rhetorics, and it has played a very important role in the development of the prose. Along with this, there is a one thing which is worth to consider here, that is new pamphlets. New pamphlets. So when you talk about the pamphlet, they were considered as the uh, rise of means they are the one of the important mean to rise of the English journalism. Elizabethan prose. We were talking about the new pamphlets. So satiric rise of English journalism we can find in this stuff. English journalism. Again, they discuss social issues of the time. Then then work of criticism and the rhetoric was important. So new pamphlets, as I told you, they were satiric in nature, and they were or they were intended to talk about the vices and virtues of the people, and it was the one mean to just criticize the contemporary situation, the contemporary people, and contemporary decision of the government also. So as we know, that is no matter, there was no democracy in the England at that time, but still it was considered as the journalism is the fourth pillar of the democracy. So we can consider it as a it's a fourth pillar of the um, social society. So it had played that important role, and through it we can see that is the different kind of literature has flourished. In that case, when you talk about the prose literature, at the early stage, pamphlets had played a very important role. The next thing we can see in Elizabethan prose, that is the discussed social issues, which Elizabethan prose of the time they just discuss these social issues like a form of entertainment, morality on the stage. So this was the period where there is no censor, uh, uh, and the writers are free to write anything, and the same thing was described on stage. They getting performed on the stage. So kind of nudity, sexuality was also discussed. Again, a kind of thing which we can call as a taboo thing in the society also discussed or performed on the stage, and this was the thing was getting discussed under the point called discussed social issues that time, morality on stage, and forms of entertainment also, and they worked as a work of criticism and rhetoric also. Criticism and rhetoric. So this is the stuff is going on. They were called as a fictitious narratives, translations, Spanish and Italian romance, Italian novella, and short stories were getting translated um, in a large number in this period into the English literature, and actually they were inspired. As this Renaissance was started in Italy, and then it was move around the others other countries of the Europe, and that's why the Italian literature has affected a lot. And the early stage of Elizabethan age, or let's say the English literature, also was inspired by the French and Latin literature, along with the Italian literature. So mm, the translations or the prose fiction also didn't become excuse for it, and the fictitious narratives like translations from the Spanish and Italian romances or Italian novellas and short stories, they all were being translated into the English, and then these people come up with an original that yes, they can write down something in their own language. So in this way we can find the flourishment of the Elizabethan prose had started. So in that case, as we have seen, the university fits one of the important person associated with it, that is John Lilly. And John Lilly is, again, we can find that he was the person who also wrote this prose fiction, or Elizabethan prose or Elizabethan fiction in that case. So if uses the Anatomy of Wits, which was written in 1578, that is one of the best example of the starting of the Elizabethan prose. The sequel of it, is England. Then it got that extraordinary popularity in the period. Even though this work has no story, but it's famous for its highly effective language, and that's why it is the term come into the picture, that is the euphuism. Okay, for your kind information, we have a question in state exam on the euphuism. What is euphuism? And remember, probably in 22 or 23 we have euphuism. What is euphuism? And we have four options. Okay, so as you many suspect me of idleness in giving year to year talk, so you may convince me of lightness in answering such toys. Okay, this is one of the example of euphuism. Then, although I have shined thee in my heart as a trusty friend, I will shun the heart after as a trustless foe. That's one of the line from Lily's work, and it was considered as an example of the euphuism. Euphuism means highly refined way of talking, and that's come into the language also, and then this euphuism, this concept come into the picture. Okay. As we move forward, Elizabethan prose, the next thing comes, that is literary criticism, which you people going to study in your literary criticism. But as we're talking about this age, you must have an idea what the development has took place under the title of literary criticism. That's why literary criticism is a growing stature of national literature, and the realization of the need to establish this principle of writing. Okay, hope you're just getting my point. As we're talking about the of time, rather writing down the literary criticism, we can say development in literary criticism. So, growing stature of the national literature, and the realization of the need to establish principle of writing, we can find criticism has started impacting its need in day-to-day literature or day-to-day reading or writing stuff. So that's why it was associated with the we can say the establish uh, the realization of the need to establish principles of writing. So when we talk about these things specifically, principles of writing, uh, the criticism of the period had played an important role. So again, this question come to the picture that uh, when you talk about the literary criticism itself, we need to establish principles of writing, the status and value of poetry, importance of classical model, merit and demerit of rhyme. These are the point of discussion under the term political criticism at that time. So, please tonight about this one. Yeah, ठीक है. Status and value of poetry. The status and value of poetry, one of the point. Then importance of classical model. Importance of classical model. Then the third thing is the merits and demerits of rhyme. Uh, when you talk about these things, hmm, um, this was the period where we can see that uh, all people were practicing the writing. They're just trying their hands in writing. So there is a need to someone has to govern uh, this flood of writers at that time, and that's why as we just move forward and see, we can mm, we can check it out that how the all things of the period. Yeah, we're discussing. We were talking about the governing bodies like in the literature. So, as there is a flood of the writers, they started. discussing of the variety of subjects at that time. Okay, and they don't, it doesn't have any kind of direction. So what they have done, they try to talk about the different stuff under the literary criticism, and one of the important point of it, that is the status and value of poetry, then importance of classical models, and merits and defects of the rhyme. So this is the way, as we can find that the literature and prose of the Elizabethan age has started flourishing, and one of the important exponent of these all things is nothing but the pamphlets. Pamphlets. So the scholars of the period, they tried to give a direction to the literature, and one of the mode they have used, that is literary criticism. uh, Hope you getting my point, and that's why the prose literature of the period had a different importance. Which are they? We'll talk about it in next slide, or in period of time. Okay. In that case, the next point I would like to present in front of you, that is the guides and models. Guides and models. So as we try, and we'll try to talk about the literature and the governing body of the literature, we always, not only in the literature but in our personal life also, or in our day-to-day life also, if we want to do something or if we want to achieve something, we must need the role model, or we must need someone to whom we have to follow. There are some people, they were called as an anay, who is uh, the one who himself is a leader. They don't need any kind of direction, or let's say any role model. So, but in the literary criticism also, they seek guides and models of at that time. Okay, one of the base stuff of this period, that is classic poetry. Classic poetry, the people seek guide from the classic poetry. Seek poetry. Because lack of good poetry from previous century, uh, they just move towards the classical writings of the age, and that's why we know as the next period, very next period, or a very next time frame after the William Shakespeare, the people like Ben Jonson, or the Fletchers and all these people, they criticize William Shakespeare for not observing the Trinities in the drama. Okay, so the prose had played the role of the guide in this time frame. So hope you're just getting my point. The next point in this regard is rhetoric and literary criticism. So when we talk about the rhetorics were associated with the literary criticism, this was the period which had laid the example which kind of criticism it should be, and which how the literature should be written. So in that case, I would like to give some examples like Thomas Wilson, then Leonard Cox, Richard Cherry, Richard Mulster, and Richard Cara. Um, most of us you have heard these names, but yeah, they were very famous names in the field of rhetoric and literary criticism in the Elizabethan age. Edmund Spencer and Gabriel Harvey's debate was one of the famous debate of the age, which talks about over what constitutes English poetry. Okay, so Harvey's debate on what what constitutes English poetry. What constitutes English poetry? Uh, the next name I would like to tell you in this regard, that is George Gascoigne. Uh, George Gascoigne, he had written one very specific work in the realm of rhetoric in this period, that is the certain notes on instruction concerning the making of verse or rhyme in English, which was written in 1575. I'll repeat it. Certain notes of instruction, certain notes of instruction concerning the making of verse or rhyme in English, written in 1575. Yeah, the next name you might have heard. Um, yeah, for your reference. No? Literary criticism. Uh, yeah, I'm talking about the next name. That is William Webb. Have you ever heard about this name, William Webb? The uh, yeah, Discourse of English Poetry, written in 1580. One of the revolutionary work of the period, written by William Webb. Discourse of English Poetry, written in 1586. That was one of the important work of the age, and it's talking about the development of the prose. Okay, specifically, uh, with respect to poetry, it's a kind of comment on the poetry, and it's just talking about governing the rules of the poetry. Thomas Champion is the next person. Observation in the art of English poesy, that is his important work regarding rhetoric and literary criticism. George Puttenham, yes, this name, yeah. You don't have an idea about the Thomas Champion's observations in the art of English poetry, but you might have read somewhere Thomas Puttenham. Yeah. So most of us, you have an idea about Thomas George Putnam, but not about the uh, Thomas Champion. So George Putnam, Art of English Poesy, 1599. That is one of the important work in the realm of the literary criticism. I'm not going that much deep because you must have to study it under the unit called literary criticism. So I'm just telling you the names, but these names are associated with the Elizabethan age. That's why I'm just pronouncing it over here. So and then the greatest, one of the greatest of the time, that is Philip Sidney, Defense of Poetry and Apology for Poetry, written in 1590. So these all works were associated with the rhetoric and the literary criticism of the age. In that case, I would like to tell you some names which were comes under the category, that is other prose writers. So Richard Hakluyt, Voyages, written in 1589. Then Richard Hooker, Raphael Holstein, then Folks, Acts and Monuments, Francis Bacon's Essays, first edition, written in 1597. So these all works were associated with the prose writers. Yeah, we'll moving towards the Francis Bacon's essay. That is very khatarnak scene. We'll have to read it as a student of the literature. So these are all we can consider it as the, how to put it in words, when we just talk about the literary criticism of the age, or specifically the prose writing of the age, it was uh, what we can say, जरा शब्द नाही आठवत yeah, let it put in the different way. So the dominance of the literary in the realm of the prose of the period is, first of all, the literary criticism. Then we can find the pamphlets were very dominant. Then the translations. So these are the three important steps which we have to see under the title called Elizabethan prose. So some important names I have already told you, and some of them you have to study under the literary criticism. So that's it from Elizabethan prose. Let's move towards the next topic. Yeah, hope you just understand these all things. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Okay. So as we just go forward and try to evaluate the Elizabethan age, we find some points. जरी इलिझाबेथन एज मध्ये सगळ्या वेगवेगळ्या गोष्टी झाल्या असतील, डेव्हलपमेंट झाले असेल, पण इट्स आणि त्याला एलिझाबेथन एजला आपण गोल्डन एज असं म्हणत असू. सो whether it is a golden age or a hyperbole, we can say that this age is not so uh, golden an age for the black community, the Irish, and the Catholic. Okay, because it also has a history. Yeah, this was the period where we can find the companies, the East India Company under the title, under the realm of Queen Elizabeth. This is starting to doing uh, going for the companies, and we know they just started putting their colonies in the different areas of the world. This was the time. So this black community started serving as a slaves for the English. So this period was not a golden age for these people, the Irish people. There is a kind of struggle between the Irish and England. It has the different story. Then they also have to suffer a lot. So not so golden age for them also. And the Catholics. We know that the story which I have told you in previous to previous lecture when we started the Elizabethan age, that the Henry VIII and his as he just come up with the Church of English, the Church of England specifically, he just started torturing the Catholics. So they also don't have this age as an a golden age. So England with the anvil became the hammer. This was Trevelyan's comment about this age, and this is the thing which we can see in the Elizabethan ages. Yeah. So one of the question come in front of us, that is, what about the women? What about the women? Did women have a renaissance? Did women have a renaissance? That's the some question. Uh, when you talk about this thing, even though the queen himself is ladies and women specifically, and she just running the whole kingdom, still did women have a renaissance? This was the one's question, because they lost economic power, briefly gained status and opportunities for education. Yeah, briefly gained status and opportunities for education, but not in a full stage. Okay, largely sheltered from the male words of writing. Ah, this is the one thing. Jan Chalter, one of the famous feminist, uh, she talks about this stuff. So largely sheltered from the male words of writing, commerce, and government. So women are always under uh, under the ground, or let's say they always have to perform under the male dominance, and that's why uh, even though just briefly gain the status and opportunities for education, they largely sheltered from these male words of writing, commerce, and government. So they always have to listen to the male counterpart of these of themselves. So even though these ladies had played an role, they don't get that much opportunities to, what we can call it, to show their talent, express themselves, and that's why this question remains, that did women have a renaissance? Then death of Elizabeth further hampered women's intellectual aspirations. So as a woman, Elizabeth had played an important role, or let's say a pivotal role, for the ladies or the women of the period. But after her death, she further hampered these women's intellectual aspirations. The next person who came after Elizabeth to the throne, he was the one who about an erudite women. He says that, but can she spin? Means he don't have even a soft corner for the women. So it was totally disruptive for the women of the age. So as you talk about the further one, the end of Elizabethan era, that is the one stuff. The last years, that is political uncertainties. Last years of her reign, Queen Elizabethan reign. Elizabeth first dies on 24 March 1603. Queen Elizabeth first dies on 24th March 1603. No explicit provision for a successor. So there is no provision for her successors who will success, um, means who will come to the throne after her. And as she was died virgin, means she didn't married, so she doesn't have any children. So there is no explicit provision for a successor. And in that case, James sixth of Scotland, James sixth of Scotland was considered as the nearest royal relative, and that's why this James sixth of Scotland became the King James first of the England. That is also the tree. We already had discussed about it, but I'll tell you about these things also. So the fraud and challenges we can find a lot in this regards, and that's how the end of Elizabethan age we can consider it. Uh, that's okay. Yeah. So whatever you see in front of you, that is the genealogy of the royal family, and as we know, that is Henry sixth, uh, and Henry seven, not six, sorry, Henry seven. Yeah. So Henry seven had two children. This Henry the eighth and Margaret Tudor. We know that Margaret Tudor was married with James IV of the House of the Stuarts of Scotland, and she went to the Scotland. So the English throne and the Scotland both were the different one. Henry, we are in the hierarchy in the Henry VIII. After the death of Henry VIII, we know that is Queen Elizabeth first. She comes to the throne. Okay, and she died in 1603. So there is no immediate heir to her, as she died. She didn't marry, so she doesn't have any child, or she didn't adopted someone. She doesn't. She didn't actually. So when you talk about the immediate successor or nearest royal relative was no one but the James sixth of the Scotland. So this is the genealogy of Scotland's family also. Margaret Tudor, as she married with the James IV of the House of the Stuarts, they have one children called James V. Okay, and James V, a child called Henry I, but he died in 1587. He was executed by Queen Elizabeth. Uh, there was another reason some time when, as we just move forward, I will tell you the reason. It has the long history, that's I'm not going in that much. Then he has a child called James VI. So after the death of Queen Elizabeth first, there is no one very nearest to the uh, royal family or a royal relative who can success the English throne. So that's why this James V, James VI brought into the throne, and he became he became King James first. And from this we can say that Stuart's dynasty has started, and he became the king of the English throne. And we can find the of the unification of England and Scotland happened in this time. Uh, but yeah, I would like to tell that story also. Even though he became the throne, he come to the English throne, he became the English king, but it was not that much easy. मी तुम्हाला जितकं सांगतोय तितकं इझी ते नाही झालं. त्याच्यामागे खूप 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 काय म्हणतो ना, ग्लिचेस होते किंवा लीगल चॅलेंजेस होते. So we want to there is a one act of the parliament in 1351. एक रूल बनवला होता यांनी. त्या रूलमध्ये असं होतं की फॉरेनर्स फॉरबिडन टू इनहेरिट इंग्लिश लँड. सो ही वॉज considered as the foreigner, so he can't inherit the English land. That was the one thing. But in 1544 parliamentary succession status, we can find that Queen Elizabeth failed to mention her any heir. So as she just go forward in 1547, Henry VIII will we have, that is debarred his Scottish relatives from the throne. So again, there is no thing which was in a favor to bring James IV on the throne. Six, sorry, James VI on the throne, because the all things were against him. And 1585 we have, if any claimants should conspire against Queen Elizabeth, their legal rights were to be forfeited. That was the rule. But there is a one person who was Secretary of State, Administrator, and politician, Privy Councillor. The name of the person is Robert Cecil. Yeah, put it like Cecil. ठीक है. Robert Cecil. This is the person who had played a very important role. We know that is bureaucrats always had solutions. So he engineered, we can call him that, he engineered James' first succession and managed a major crisis. How? Had organized the publication of King James Basilicon, that is Basilicon Doran, advice on kinship. So what it says, made king by prior arrangements. So he declared king by law, by linear succession and undoubted right. So as there is no anyone we can call as uh, the successor to Queen Elizabeth, he was the one who had defined the role of King James First. So, what was the advantage of King James First, and how the starting of the Jacobean age had started? That we will study in our next lecture. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. Good night.